System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city left.
Today is Sunday, September 15th. I am Amin TMK for Inner City Left, along with Emoja Lil Tanky Sumla. We're very excited to have TurnLeftist with us here today. We got a lot we want to discuss. Mike, how are you doing? And thank you for being on the show.
How's it going, you guys? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I wanted to get right into this. There was sort of a hoopla over all the kind of leftist Instagram community, whatever loosely tied that is, when your page, all 4 or 5 different accounts were suspended at once. And I don't know what it is now, TurnLeftist 53 or whatever.
Oh my God,
it may
dude.
be.
Yeah.
But I just wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about that incident, and also sort of like your run-ins with the community guidelines of Instagram.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I don't think of it as that big of a deal. Like, it's really hard for me to like take it very seriously or think of it as like real censorship when like a meme page gets banned. It's like if like RT or like a real news outlet gets banned or something, like that's real censorship, right? It's like, so it's hard for me to really take it in too serious of a light. But I get what you're saying. Like, I didn't get banned like all at once, but there was the other day, like last week, where like all my pages got banned, the ones that I have that are all backups now. So I originally had TurnLeftist. I amassed like a decent following. I had like 50,000. I've been doing that since like 2018, and then I started like the podcast back in 2020, and again like started to get a little bit of a following, but things fizzle out as they tend to do. And I think a lot of that had to do with sort of the political atmosphere. Like I feel like a lot of people went back to brunch during the Biden administration. People got like de-radicalized once they saw the liberals get back into power, and it's unfortunate. I don't know like what the upcoming election will spell for that, but anyway, so after having like the podcast and everything, I just kept going with the meme page, and I don't know, I'm just not good at like predicting the community guidelines. Like you know how you guys play it. I'm sure you guys have the similar mindset when you're trying to post something like, is this the one that's going to get me a violation or a ban or something? Is this gonna
Yeah,
get
you
taken
never
down 'cause
know
of the
which one
words
it's
in
going
it?
to be.
And you can never predict it. Like it's always some weird thing. Like I'll get violations from something I posted back in June, and it's like, oh, okay, so somebody is pissed off at me. I pissed off someone in the comment section. They're going through my old shit and they're reporting everything, right? So that's what I assumed happened. I don't think again that it's like I'm some kind of journalist doing like real exposés on anything, and that's why I'm getting silenced by the man or something. It's just like I'm pissing people off online. Like you guys can see that I'm obviously commenting on every like reel I see, like conservative views are linked to lower cognitive ability or whatever the fuck, like just to piss off the roidoids because that's how I have fun online, and that's really what it's about at the end of the day. But if you have fun as a leftist online in the fascist country and atmosphere that we live in, you're going to make a lot of enemies really quickly, right?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and I just wanted to talk about this too. I mean, so there's like so many things. You're right, like that we can be concerned about. I think you brought up the RT Sputnik sort of ban and all the things that are surrounding that. This is a question for both you and Tanky. You know, like as you see it now. I mean, where is sort of this alternative news source? Like, how is like the current American system sort of continuing to come down on these differences of opinion when it comes to things like Russia and Iran and Palestine, these very important issues. You're seeing like RT, going under sanctions. How do you see the current state of, journalism within the United States?
What do you think, Emoja? I want to hear what you have to say first.
Well, so one thing I would say is I would differentiate between this being leftist or right wing, right? What I'm starting to see is really anything that veers from the Overton window. So I would say dissent media, right? Because there's dissent media on the right, there's dissent media on the left. And what I've been seeing is there will be purges, and it's hard to imagine it's not coordinated, right? When I'll use your page as an example. When your pages went down, the latest purge, right? That was the same weekend that Scott Ritter gets arrested.
Mhm.
The FBI is in his house. Um, all of these things happen. The Uhuru trial is about to begin, right? And I feel like what happens is they cast a wide net, right? Because when you control the Overton window, there are certain conversations that are going to stand out automatically. right? It doesn't matter whether you're leftist or right wing. If you're saying things like, I don't know, the Ukrainian military is filled with Nazis. That's not part of the message. You are off
Mhm,
message. Republicans don't say that. Democrats don't say that, right? But you will find libertarians to say that. You will
mhm,
find communists to say it. You'll find, you know what I'm saying? So like it's this is the danger of the center. The center has pulled in everything to such a point, whereas what the acceptable spectrum is, if you're off that, they automatically know how to find you. And this is the ways where the West has utilized their artificial intelligence very well, if nothing
mhm.
more than like a caching and a predictability model. These are my first thoughts. So while you would say you don't have the intent of carrying the burden of like a journalist, right? You wouldn't say I don't know, Julian Assange.
Mhm.
All of these things are little things. When you have your platform, this is a group of people that may already be pulling away from the expectations that are put forth from what's called the American Center. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter to them, right? Once you move past a certain amount, let's say 10,000, 20,000, whatever that number is, once you're out of spec, right? Um, they begin to diminish your ability to continue to grow. And there's simple ways to do this. Simple as like being approached. Hey, would you like to work for that? We see that you've been doing a lot of work as a what's the latest word for
An
propaganda?
influencer, like yeah.
Influencer, right? How do we say propagandist? Influencer. And we think that your efforts can mirror with what we're doing very well. And we just like to sponsor you with the. As soon as you start with those no's, they're already seeing, okay, these people are a little bit out of spec, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So those are just my initial thoughts.
No, that's dead on. Like, you made a lot of really good points there. Like, I agree. Um, I don't feel like I'm a big fish, but I feel like I'm one of those little sand crabs or one of those little clams you find at the beach, right at the edge of the water that's getting like washed over by a wave of like some higher up in Instagram sent out a memo saying that they got something from the State Department or Operation Mockingbird saying we need to crack down on all this anti-imperialist content. So probably me and like 40,000 other pages got banned or whatever. Plenty of them, I'm sure, are actual Russian bots or Chinese bots or whatever. Like, it's just funny to me also hearing like all these news stories about like the tenant media. I was just listening to the TrueAnon episode about it right before this, and they were talking about how these guys were organizing in Discord and all their conversations were so sloppy or whatever. I'm like, damn, it really feels good to be an honest communist who's literally just trying to spread the word about anti-imperialism and historical materialist thought and not try to be on the payroll of a foreign country, not try to even make money off of it. Like, if I make a little money off the Patreon, great, but it's only going back into stuff that I'm doing for the show. Like, I'm going to pay other people to write notes for an episode or something. I'm not in this for profit. I'm not in this to like profit off of like monetize the rot. As I was saying the other day on Instagram, it's like that stuff disgusts me. Like, especially ever since the genocide, like the whole tone of leftist online content creation has changed for me, and I don't feel the same like celebratory tone. Like, I was thinking about back in the days of 2018 when I first started getting into Politogram and how excited and how hopeful everything felt because people still felt like they were going to radicalize enough people and create some kind of real change. And now I feel like that horizon is so far closed that people don't see that as a real option. And like you were saying, Emoji, like even the center has co-opted so much, but what their vision is horrifying. They're perfectly happy to now stoke nuclear war tensions with Russia. Like, that's another recent development in the last 24 hours. They are really trying to stoke what was the Pentagon released a contract for research into nuclear war effects on agriculture, specifically in Eastern Europe, which they know is the breadbasket. Like, they want to be able to drop some tactical nukes and still get their grain out of Ukraine, which is what they're using it for anyway. It's like all of their intentions are perfectly clear, but because of like you were saying, I mean, the disparate media sphere and how there's so many different alternative medias, what I think the overall net effect is that everyone has their own individual narrative. And while there may be a lot more anti-imperialist, like actual principled people getting alternative media, there's so many people who are just in various different ways, like, I mean, you can see it if you just scroll any social media and you see the stupid things that people believe, like the stupid spiritual conspiracies that people get into, homesteading, whatever kind of oddball thing they can get into that isn't materialism, that isn't just the basic thing of the people who rule you and say that they are ruling you are actually corrupt, and this whole system is is like justifiable to replace and overthrow, but you can't do that without the collective action. So it is still useful to them, even to have all this alternative media, as good as it is. It's disparate enough and it's not collective or solidified enough to lead people in the one direction where they actually do need to go, which is like where Russia and China are going. But like everyone's so scared of that. And it really is just the case that like I just keep thinking of this analogy. It's like, imagine being a German in Nazi Germany and saying, like, yes, I know we have the concentration camps. I know we're committing a genocide, but Russia is really fascist. Their whole system is fascist, and Russia is just so fucking fascist. Like, that's literally what Americans are saying now, here and now. They have the concentration camps. They forgot about them because Biden got in. They have the proxy wars. They have the Nazis. They know that the fascism is coming in all the European and Western countries. Like, they're watching it happen with Germany and France and everything, and they still cannot connect all the dots because they have subconsciously accepted fascism. And that's just, it's a bad spot to be in, you guys. I don't know.
And this is one of those things again, right, where I like to talk about a little bit of the difference between like black leftists and leftists at large, right? This is such a prevailing theme where we come from. I mean, you can go back to hip hop songs in the 90s like Cell Therapy, where Goody Mob, which is a charting rap band, like, they're on the billboard, talking about incarceration camps that are being built. They're talking about FEMA camps that are being built. And like this is like always in the consciousness of blackness, right? These are things that we've been dealing with since at least the 90s. And then you watch it and it's like, well, no, they're gonna put us in there, right?
Mhm.
Like so like this is something that forms our practice really early on. I just want to say, like, I think it can be cliche sometimes to quote literature, except that these things exist as a guide. I think about, okay, so two quotes from 1984. War is peace, right? When Kamala can get up and say there are no Americans actively serving in a combat zone, right?
So good.
And when we're talking about what that kind of, when you can get literally fact checked from quoting a politician who's saying literally these exact words, and they're like, oh, you didn't get the context of what they're saying, but they did say it, right? Like this
Mhm.
isn't a deep fake. This is not AI. They said these things. Who is anyone then to be able to be the person to be like, well, what her intent was, right? And then, like, I mean, again, with the risk of deplatforming if you don't attend what they're suggesting. The rest of the quote is freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Like when you can have a major American candidate, right? And for over a month on their presidential platform, there's literally not even any of what your views are, right? It's just donate here, donate to the Democrats, right? It's no promises anymore. There isn't, and so what happens is you begin to project, and this is the brilliance of Democrats and what the center has done in taking the language of the left and liberals, although liberals are closer to center, that's a whole other conversation. They're able to weaponize identity, and this is what Butch Ware was talking about on the Breakfast Club recently, where you weaponize this identitarianism to represent something off of the assumption of what that is, so that the people that have that identity then project their own values onto the candidate without the candidate ever saying any of these things. Well, as a black woman, what I stand for is, right? Even when you're talking about someone who hasn't really utilized that identity as their primary political marker up until very recently. The other quote is, and I think about, like, again, how the metadata works to always be aggregating our profiles, right? It was terribly dangerous to let your thoughts wander when you were in public place or within range of a telescreen. The smallest thing could give you away. A nervous tick, an unconscious look of anxiety, a habit of muttering to yourself, anything that carried with it the suggestion of abnormality or having something to hide, right? And it's like, again, all of the mob movies you see, like, I think about when Rico was invented and, the FBI is like acting like they're cable men and going into your house and planting bugs. Like being in a post Snowden world, like that is so passe. Like they don't have to do any of that. Your phone is listening, your tablet is listening, your PS5 is listening, your Alexa is listening at all times. All of the things that you're saying are allowing these things to become a a better sculpture of who you are, even in your unconscious moments. And so now, more than ever, they know the people that will and will not be dissent. This is
Mhm.
why, again, I say it goes beyond even leftism or right wing, although proud commie, right? Anyone that is not toting the line and giving the accepted on brand speech becomes a person to be targeted for deplatforming. And
Yeah.
deplatforming in the digital world often means the erasure of person. Your identity is so locked into your online persona. Oh my God, I have 50 million Twitter followers. I've
Mhm.
got the 10,000 Meta fans. Like so much of your identity becomes a representation of this, and this is something they can literally take away at any given time. This is a censorship issue, even though the I think leftists often magnify themselves like, oh, my impact, I saved the world. It's
Mhm.
like, but you did make your ripple, and that's one less ripple in the pond.
Yeah, I think there's great points. Great conversation, y'all. I wanted to talk about this too because I think Tanky, you might have mentioned it, or Mike, I'm not sure, but the idea of metadata, it's
Mhm.
really an insidious kind of a collection data, sort. It's like this algorithm where this website or where these cookies, they know you better than you know yourself, and it seems like another one of those things that happens in the West where it's just this like slow degrading of privacy. It's a slow degrading of like your own agency or whatever it may be. And something that we get a lot, I'm sure you get a lot too, Mike, is in China, in Russia, in Cuba, there is all of this state-controlled media. And again, I don't live in China. I don't live in Russia. All I can do is look from where I am here in in America or in the Western world. And it just kind of seems like there's like I someone was telling me they live in England and they have to pay for their social media. And there's all of these like
Oh
guidelines of what
wow.
they can and can't take because again, if you're not paying for it, then you're the product. And I think that's sort of where metadata has brought us. And it's kind of like now at a point where it feels like so invasive that like these computer algorithms know you better than you do. I just pulled this up at Inner City Left. You can always check us out as long as we're there. Facebook partner emits smartphone microphones, listen to people talk, and serve better ads. One of Facebook's advertising partners had reportedly admitted listening to spying on people's conversation through smartphones to serve curated ads. And the tagline is in news, we already assume that no one finds surprising, but it is pretty insane to me that phones can just listen to you whenever you want, and there is no legal ramifications for it. But I still have to sort of hear about how bad it is in these other countries. What is your response to that, or what are your thoughts
Just
on
on
that?
a quick, I just want to say these things are only surprising if you did not read Edward Snowden's memo. He discussed all of this in 2014. He literally said that Facebook is the most pervasive spying app the world has ever known, right? When you start to look into who the early investors were that allowed Zuck to take a product that nominally sells nothing, and he went from being a bright college student with a future to a billionaire, right? Like, where did that money come from, right? It's not hard to look into those things. The only other thing I want to say, and I'll step off for Mike, is the whole concept of state. What is it? The label,
Oh, state affiliated media.
right? Why can't I go on CNN and say fuck? Oh, the FCC won't allow me. So all media from every major developed country is state run. If they have things that you can say, I mean, PBS gets its funding from the federal government, right? But you would never see these labels placed on these things. I mean, I think it's like it's almost as redundant and stupid a takedown as anti-Semitic at this point. Like that's you're just mad another nation also has an application to utilize propaganda.
Yeah. I wanted to mention earlier another page that I'm a really big fan of that actually is doing the closest thing you could do to journalism on Instagram as far as a meme page is CoinTelHo. She had like a huge following and she got taken down a couple days after I did, had way more of a following than I'll ever have. And now her backup page has like 13,000 followers because of course she should. Like she should have like hundreds of thousands, like millions of followers. Like that is a fantastic page, and I love what she's doing. One of the things that she had on her page before it got taken down was just a text post that she had made, and this applies perfectly here. I keep it in my notepad. I use it all the time online. I'm going to read it out of here. She says, liberal brain allows a person to say, of course, I know there's propaganda in our media, and it's lies used to start major wars. I'm not a rube. And then not read independent or global South news, history from a non Western point of view, independent scholars, theory, etc. Because our media tells them that those sources can't be trusted. Liberal brain allows a person to believe a country with 800 bases in 80 plus countries, the rest of the world combined has about 30 foreign bases, and which has attempted over 50 coups since World War II, is concerned for any country's sovereignty or human rights, from Ukraine to Taiwan, Syria to Venezuela. They will say this with a straight face and be offended when you challenge them. It will then allow a person, when this is pointed out, to say, well, everywhere has propaganda and no history is totally objective, and consequently be satisfied with and confident in their understanding of the basic world order. The possibility of bias outside the Western media ecosystem justifies the near total rejection of other perspectives, which it should be noted tend to be quite a bit less biased because the truth happens to favor their perspective. They will admit they're propagandized and in the same breath say they know better than to read or believe what anything other than state corporate Western media tells them. This is the brain on liberalism. And she boiled it down so perfectly. Like I have to just save that and bring it out every chance I get. It's the same kind of like mentality, like I was saying earlier with my Nazi and America analogy. It's like people will understand that the US had segregation around World War II. It obviously wasn't a friendly place for gay people or women, even. Like, it just was not a good place progressively. And then not make that same analogy with Russia today and say, look, they're acting in a progressive fashion on the world stage right now because they are anti imperialist. It doesn't mean they have perfectly socially progressive policies domestically. And that's also not the thing that we're supporting when we talk about critically supporting Russia and their anti imperialist endeavors. Same thing going back to, like you were saying, I mean, about how people view America as having like this free media, and they will admit the awful things that it does, like the Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, like torture camp, the genocide it's participating in right now, proxy war with Ukraine or whatever, and say, but at least with the West, we know about these things. Like it's publicized, and we're allowed to know the evils of our government, as if that somehow makes it better, and as if people don't know about the evils that other governments are doing, like as if it isn't publicized ad nauseum by your government for propaganda purposes. And also just the assumption that like even a place like China or Russia has like less free media, as if people don't know about the Great Firewall to the point that it has that nickname, and that they don't know that Chinese people frequently use VPNs all the time to circumvent it. It's like they have access to the same internet that we do. You just might not want to believe that because it's convenient for your interpretation as a Westerner to think that all Chinese people are kind of dumb automatons who are just subject to a dictatorship and they're happy with it, or they just don't dare step out of line. Like that's literally what Americans and Westerners believe, is that other countries are comprised of a bunch of dumb animals who just willfully submit to subjugation, whereas we are a bunch of free individualists who are not doing that. Like we are not buying the propaganda. Like it's so ludicrous on its face.
And I just want to follow that up, right? With like people only think about foreign policy in America when Republicans are in office.
Mhm.
Like Democrats right now, the same Democratic Party that is making all of these arrests all around the country, insinuating that people are operators of foreign governments, right? And that there's some type of collusion to create election interference, are the same people that are running ops in South America to sometimes literally depose and or kill democratically elected leaders. Like
The Venezuela one just this weekend.
and also Colombia, which has a status with America that is the highest military alliance you can have and not be in NATO status. So even in a nation where you've done everything they've ever asked you to do for 40 years, you get one or two speeches that you don't like, right? And now the Colombian leader, democratically elected, you can't even make the implications that you can try to play with the Venezuela game, even though, once again, the Venezuelan Supreme Court is not run by the Venezuelan executive branch and has already certified. I mean, imagine, right? American elections do not certify within the first 24
Mhm.
hours. It's all projections. Certification takes a lot of fucking time. When you're talking about, I mean, if it is a real election, I mean, if you can within 100% certainty say exactly what happened within 24 hours, that raises other questions, right? But I'm saying, right, it, these things become part of the liberal fascination when a Trump is in office or when a Bush is in office, right? This is why people say Obama was the great sedative, right? He took away all of that revolutionary anti-war spirit and destroyed it, right? He destroyed it with a Harvard tie and oh, this is my Spotify top 40 list, right? He seemed so cool in such a way that the average American again could project themselves into having a world where they see this guy. And
Mm.
it's ironic because the guy that really made that his brand first was George W. Bush, right? A third generation billionaire that people in the South that lived in trailer parks felt like they could have a beer with. Like this is brilliant branding,
Yeah.
right? Like, but the Democrats took that and put that on a whole nother level to such a point. Whereas when you see these things happen around the world, because you see some projection of yourself represented in this person that is nominally wielding power, right? 'Cause really, we have no idea who's wielding power right now. I don't know who's giving the say to guys like Zelensky. I either one don't believe it's Biden, or I'm terrified even more if it
If it
is
is,
Biden,
yeah.
right? Like there's no good answers here,
Yeah.
right? But the reality is I don't know but the people who are put up to look like they're wielding power, right? Look like me. And so I think to myself, well, I wouldn't do this. A black woman wouldn't do this. You know, we come from the world of being oppressed, and, right? Like your own projection overwhelms your manifestation of looking at the reality that's right there in front of your face.
Could you guys tell me what you think of this? I was just thinking of this while you were talking, Emoja. I remember being radicalized under the Obama administration because his rhetoric coming in was so radical, and then his administration was so neoliberal. It just I gave up all hope in the Democratic Party. Like that instantly turned me, not instantly, but just like in the span of 4 years, it turned me into a radical leftist because I didn't see any kind of possible change, substantive change within electoralism. And so I feel like I while you were speaking, I started to have that same hope for a Kamala Harris administration because she seems like a black woman. She should be radical. She should be helping the working class. And then when she doesn't do that, hopefully more liberals will be radicalized. But then I realized as I was thinking that her messaging is also to the right of even Obama's campaign messaging. Like she's not trying to promise universal health care or anything that he was promising in 2008, even though it actually would be better if they had switched places. Like Obama's rhetoric would be perfect for right now when we're experiencing a similar like economic downturn to 2008, but also it's like kind of denial. Like the media does not acknowledge that we're still in this like long-term slow recession that is affecting the working class only. So his rhetoric would be better for now, and Kamala would have been like an acceptable progressive for 2008, right? Um, but so I just feel like it's actually even more hopeless in that sense because she's not going to radicalize people because she's obviously not even promising that out of the gate. But I don't know. What do you guys think of that jumbled mismatch of thoughts? I don't know.
This is one thing that I think the Democrats do extraordinarily well is they're able to reduce their campaigns into one word. The reason why hope works in 2006 but wouldn't work now is because people don't have hope.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like in 2006, you still are in this place where like I hope the Iraq war ends. I hope the war on terror ends. I hope that the Patriot Act is overturned. If we get these Democrats in, I hope that we can defeat Citizens United, right? That that's the mind state of 2006, and the Democrats tapped into that beautifully. Now,
Mm.
Obama wasn't even the farthest left in the Democrats running back then. You still had who was you
Howard
had
Dean.
Howard Dean is nominally to the left of him. I would say Dennis Kucinich was running, who is far to the left of any of these guys, up to and including, by the way, Israeli grandpa, right? And then you had right
Mike Gravel. Was Mike Gravel
Mike
running back then?
Gravel. Mike Gravel is
R.I.P.
so
to him. Yep.
I
far
forgot
R.I.P.
about
to
Mike
God.
Gravel.
to the left of guys like Bernie Sanders, right? So like that's so. But also I want to say too, again, I always have to thank coming up in the black tradition of leftism. The black tradition of leftism starts with Pan Africanism, and so it's always got this connection to the global South and looking at other things. When Obama's coming up, I'm already listening to Hugo Chavez, so I am thoroughly unimpressed with the
Yeah.
promises of an Obama. I'm
I
like,
don't. Yeah, I don't think that it's a like. Amoja told me this a long time ago. Like he's been a Republican, but he's never been a Democrat. I don't know if I can like out you right there, but
Wow.
so I don't think.
I was 15, man. I was 15,
All right, okay, all right. You providing context. I'm just giving the people what I think they want to know, the background nitty gritty. So but I was right there with you, Mike. I was actually campaigning. It's embarrassing to say, part of the first Obama campaign.
We've all been there.
And you know what I'm saying? And my big thing was Guantanamo Bay. It was a huge thing that I
closed Guantanamo Bay.
He said the first 30 days. So
Right.
as a person who's like interested in like, what do y'all call it? Dialectical materialism and all that. Like, what happened? Like, what are the rhetoric and symbolism? That's fun and games, but like what actually happened? And 8 years later, Guantanamo Bay was still there. And I do think that there is like this idea for like regular people of most people are cool with symbolism because they don't really have a idea of where they want to be. They're just going through life. They're going through, the American, what do you call it? The American dream or whatever they consider it to be. And they really are just popping up every 3.5 years to regurgitate some sort of state propaganda. And unfortunately, it's difficult for us as leftists because we do want to bring those people to our side, but also we have to spend so much time and work and effort to budge someone there. When I could maybe have a conversation with the leftists and bring them along the lines more of class consciousness in the way that we are and start to build a coalition that way. And I think it is difficult. But one of the things that I think is tough, and I think Tanky mentioned this, that microcosm of the interview with Butch Ware and Jill Stein on The Breakfast Club. You are seeing in real time an op trying to, muddle the conversation from what a Green Party person is. Whether you vote for the Green Party or not, I think all of us would say that they're better than a Democrat.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yes.
And see, this goes to the point of why the whatever you think about her, Jill Stein presidency is an extremely dangerous moment at this time, right? For several reasons. What have the Democrats chose to run on, right? In 2006, it was hope, right? In 2024, it's joy, right? Because we are in the get the bag era, right? If you got the bag, if you're doing well, you winning. You know what I'm saying? Or if not, you remember a time when you were, and joy is an inherently nostalgic thing, right? Here's where it fails. It fails for the same reason a group like Nirvana bubbles up in the 90s, right? When you have all of these hard rock and heavy metal groups in the 80s, all on Lamborghinis, and you got the video vixens, and they're all this great. And then a guy like Kurt Cobain comes along and flannel, like saying, I'm just a regular dude, and life really is not that good for me. Once again, more people can relate to that. More people, once you pull away from the whole influencer epic of like, look at how shit is so good for me right now. Most people are not winning, right? Most people are not winning. And so joy is not going to land. It's not going to land because people in their truth, they know your student loans are behind. Rent is up, 14%. You only got a 3% raise. You're working 2 jobs. You're probably not happy in your situation. You have these lingering ailments. Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's not.
It goes back to that. Do you remember that CNN interview they were doing where they were talking? It was a black woman, and she was like, they're not addressing the issues that we have. And I think that's the real disconnect. And I think that's the real, I don't want to say answer, but I think that's the crux of what your question is, Mike. It's like, there are people who are interested in, okay, we're working. I think the language of we're working on a ceasefire is great because it's like, if you're into rhetoric and symbolism and you're just performatively interested in this thing because you may have an Arab friend or a person that cares about Palestine or whatever it may be, you're willing to perform that. And I think that's why the conversation surrounding Palestine is so much bigger, which I'm obviously glad about. But the conversation surrounding Russia is so much smaller because there's really no way to perform for it. It's like you don't really have an Eastern European friend probably or a communist Russia friend. You probably don't. But you do have someone that maybe connects you to Palestine. And I think that often that's the disconnect. People are not worried about an issue. They're just worried about the symbolism that allows them to perform the thing that they need to so they can go about their lives. And I think that that's something that we're working on as leftists is like, and I think what you're getting at, Mike, and I appreciate your humility, but you do a lot of work and you've informed us and a lot of other people and we bring that to other people. And those ripples exist in ways that we can't really truly acknowledge because we don't know. But I do know that a lot of people, I mean, me and Emotion had conversations years ago, and I was like, dang, okay, actually, I need to change, the ways that I feel about things. And I think that that's really disconnected. And I wanted to ask y'all, this is going to be my last question, and y'all can just go on it from wherever. But you mentioned this, Mike, this idea of back to brunch when Biden came in. And I actually, there was a person that I know, through Instagram, whatever. I don't want to say it's like an intimate connection, but this is an associate person. And unironically, they said back to brunch, maybe like last year or something like that. And I think about this word all the time, normalization. Like the incredible, like in 2020, over 300 people were killed by the police during the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd protests. That's incredible to me. 300 people were killed by the police and many more thousands arrested. But now we don't really talk about that because it's just sort of been normalized. And then we have the Ferguson protesters, like information saying they're being attacked, they're being targeted, and it's just normalized now. Emoji didn't care too much about this, but there was the guy who was talking about he was going to shoot the current president and all this other stuff, and he was on Facebook with it, and they just came into his house and killed him. No trial, no nothing. He was an old guy too, and they just straight killed him. And I just want to maybe just, if y'all could speak to sort of like, it's like you mentioned COINTELPRO, but COINTELPRO is a actual thing that happened many years ago, and it seems that it keeps getting worse and worse and worse through normalization. And I just wanted to know if y'all both could sort of speak to that.
I just want to, on a quick, we can never say COINTELPRO is a thing that happened. COINTELPRO is a thing that happens, right?
I wonder what it's named now.
Yeah, they just changed the name. It's still going on, of course.
It's called Coin. It's called Coin. And you see actual people that utilize Coin all the time. David Petraeus is probably the most famous Coin general. And they literally utilized a playbook that they came in breaking up the Black resistance struggle in the 60s, and also the Latino and the American Indian movement, right? They took all of those tactics that they learned, right? And this is where Langley ends up informing Washington, because all of these things became DOD playbook. These are the playbooks, those literal plays, those same plays are utilized then to go into Ba'athist Iraq and turn those against Shia Iraq, right? And like to create little segments of resistance where no one person, you see what is dissimilar more than you see what is similar. And so you factionalize, right? And you're never in a way where you can compartmentalize your small identity fractures, right? And coalesce into a force that can be resisting. Like, this is real. This is not conspiracy theory at all. This is literally what happened from those things. This is always why I push back on COINTELPRO is a thing that happened. Coin still happens, right? They literally just call it Coin now for counterinsurgency. But the whole thing was the counterinsurgency program, right? Just like every other thing, it just gets a rebranding, throw a little new paint of coat on there, and that's what you get.
Yeah. I mean, I think you made a good point a second ago when you were talking about how some people interact with politics and they're fine with the performative stuff because their interaction with politics is every 3 years, and it's like comment sections online, and they don't really want things to be different. And that's like I guess probably the majority of Americans, even the ones who say that they're like unsatisfied with some aspect of capitalism, whether it's just their own personal career or personal life or whatever. Most people, I think, are fine with it, which leads me to the inevitable conclusion that it is just a class issue. Like, I can't look at any other aspect of Americans and say it's like what their religious character, like their emotional character, their cycle. It's like it has to be class, right? We're materialists. We have to look at it from the financial, material perspective, and so then that applies to everything. It's like when I think of people, when I think Emoji was saying it's like this is the get the bag era. Like this feels like the new '80s era, and it's like I'm sure a lot of people want to think of it in cycles of decades like that, where you have like the peace and love '60s, and then the hippie or whatever they were '70s, like the disco '70s, and then the cocaine Wall Street '80s. It's like I think those are more reflections of people's reactions to the economic cycles. It has nothing to do with the fucking emotion or psychology. It's like people are reacting and then they make up the story in their mind to justify it afterwards. And they say that that was the cause rather than the effect. It's like, it's what people do in their personal lives too. It's like, I know, it's so funny. I feel like I get old and cynical, and that's how I just analyze everything. You feel like you just see patterns that may or may not be there, but it all feels like historical materialism to me. But as far as like the COINTELPRO pro aspect of it. I almost said COINTELPRO. The state backlash to it, it's like that's why I'm so interested now in like reading about or learning about the original founders of Black Lives Matter, them being assassinated and then replaced with these more acceptable, compatible leftist like girl boss people who then make a bunch of money and now discredit the movement because the right wingers point out that they have like big houses and they're not like militant activists or whatever. It's like all of that is intentional. Um, and so like my process of radicalization was basically stumbling into as a suburban white dude, the stuff that like you just knew all along, emoji. It's like the stuff that like the real marginalized people have always been saying. And then trying to say that in a way that like middle class people who are okay with everything and don't really want politics to change, that they can get it, that they can like get it in layman's terms, hopefully. So it's just like it's not surprising to me at all. It's disappointing. It sucks, but it's not surprising that like the Black Lives Matter movements, that the Occupy movements, that all of these disparate and like unprincipled movements without a vanguard party fizzle out. They would do that on their own, but then they also have the added repression from the state against them. So yeah, it's just not. It's just all to say we live in the fascist country. Like you live in the only empire that exists right now. So none of that, none of those effects of it should be all that surprising. I guess what I keep catching flack for now is like I keep trying to take this real edgy line online where I'm just like Americans are fucking bad, just fuck them all. Like why are we trying to like radicalize these people? Like we've shown them all the podcast episodes we need to. They should get the picture by now. They're kind of okay with this. We should stop having so much fucking sympathy for them. But I don't know. I mean, I still kind of want to like. What do you guys think of this idea? Maybe you guys would like to collaborate on it with me. I would like to make some kind of leftist iceberg, either video or podcast episode. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. People do this where they have an iceberg and they just have the better known issues up top and they go deeper and deeper. And you can make these videos or episodes as long as you want, but I think it would be a cool way to get across some of the finer points because I think so many people are stuck at the top of the iceberg in the Bernie era or even like the Jill Stein kind of thing. But then as soon as you bring up like Russia or China, they're like, "Ooh, that's scary," and my racism is pricked up a little bit. Like my xenophobia has kicked in again. It's like I feel like there are so many things that we could be getting across that would really get people over to our side of the fence. Um, because it really just does come down to, like you were saying, I mean, some people are only cool with the performative thing, and those people will not be radicalized under the coming Harris administration if she wins. They will go right along with the girl boss motive the whole time. Like, they'll just enjoy it. They will be enjoying brunch. But like a lot of people who really want something to be different will get radicalized under Harris. That's all just to assume that she wins. Like I'm still on the fence by the week. I think you and I, Emoji, talked about it on my stream like 2 weeks ago, and you're still, I guess, pretty confident that Trump might pull it out, which I'm sort of leaning over to now because of Jill Stein's increased popularity. And not to say that I think she could win, although I would love to see that happen because it would be the only way the genocide would fucking end. Um, I think her purpose or her function will end up being to like steal it from Harris and hand it to Trump because he just does not have the juice on his own. But he could get it with Stein pulling votes in swing states. But what do you guys think of that or anything else? I don't know.
So I'll try to be pretty quick on that one. I just want to talk about again the demographic realities of America, and again the fact that identity has been weaponized to such a point it becomes your de facto modus operandi. Now there are things that will outperform these trends, like for example, Donald Trump got more of the white woman vote than Hillary Clinton did, right? But this is because Hillary Clinton's unlikables are so fucking high. There's there's no moving, and you know everything you feel like you need to know about her. Either you love her or you dislike her intensely. There's not anyone where like, oh, I don't really know that much about her. Jill Stein is exactly the opposite. You either love her or you hate her, but mostly you don't know her. You've never heard of her, or you've maybe heard her name once. This is why she represents an existential threat to what the Democrats are trying to do because their whole campaign is run off identity. I got to tell you, there are a lot more white women in America than there are black women. And when you're saying something that is decidedly more to the left, right? And it's not like, oh, joy, right? Some vapid ass statement that you really can't connect to because you're not experiencing joy like that. And this
But you were
person is
dancing to Little John just a second ago. So
right. But like, I don't think a mother in Iowa is dancing to Little John at all, right? I think she wants to know why her medical premiums continue to go up all the time. Why Democrats are no longer talking about Medicare for all, or and like again, coming up in the traditions that I came up in, I know that these things are possible because you can look at Cuba and see that it's been done. You can look at China and see that it's been done. You don't have to like these cultures to acknowledge there are things that they do better than we do, right? And so, like, when I'm hearing things like Medicare for all, again, this is Obama middle of the road ass language that even then gets softened down and then eventually thrown away. Kamala's not saying any of those things right now. Kamala's not guaranteeing uh, 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 minimum wage increase. She's saying minimum wage needs to increase. Well, first off, you had opportunities to do that and you didn't do it. But even from there, the number that's been floating has been floating for 15 years and is already way too small. $15 an hour is not enough in almost any major American city.
Just real quick,
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
it be cool if Biden, in his like the rest of the term he has left, used that new absolute power they were given by the Supreme Court to do something really cool right before the election to boost their chances? What do you think of the chances of that happening, though? It's like
Zero.
they just don't care, man.
Zero, because Biden represents a stopgap. And he's always said that. This is a thing that you do have to give him. He said specifically, if I am president, nothing will fundamentally change.
Dead
So
on.
he said that, right? So, like, that's what he's always been there to be, is a stopgap against the left, not against the right. Because again, a segregationist is already significantly further to the right than I'll ever be in my life, you know? And so those are those things. I think that she represents a danger because now what they've always said is, well, you don't have any other choice but me, right? And now you have another choice, right? And it's based on whatever your personal politics are, which again is something that the Democrats try to run away from. They try to say, well, let's just make America better, right? And without any type of
Just
feeling
feelings.
of what that means.
It's just feelings. I
Mhm.
feel that it should be this way.
You can project onto that better what that's supposed to mean. Well, better maybe means my kid gets into college. Better maybe means I get accepted for this loan, right? Not better in a way that changes your whole window where you're like, wow, better means that banks shouldn't be charging interest more than 4% or, like some radical thing that's really going to frighten their corporate masters. I can't even say her corporate masters because the Democrats and the Republicans have the same corporate masters.
I think something that's interesting to acknowledge for folks that, again, maybe not have left the United States or don't have that context, is the United States is really like 6 countries. It's like the Northeast, it's like the Mid-Atlantic, it's the Deep South, it's Texas, it's the Midwest, it's the Pacific North. There's all these different think about how many states, 50 plus states. There's not a American person like in that sense. Like if I'm in UAE or I'm in Egypt or I'm in Kuwait, there is an understanding of we're Kuwaitis, we're Emiratis, we're Egyptians, and that permeates throughout the entire culture. That doesn't really exist in the same way in the United States. And it goes sort of to this like idea like American exceptionalism, which is like we're great because of this diversity, but actually it's not.
Individualism.
It's just rugged individualism, and there is no real connection. And that's why we try to bring up Russia, and we try to bring up Iran, and we try to bring Myanmar and all these other places, the global majority that are dealing with, all of the ramifications of, Western imperialism. And again, I think it just goes back to the point is like, they've done a great job. I don't want to blame it on Americans. They've done a great job with their propaganda. It seeps through every aspect of society. If you go to a job, your job is political. If you want to sign up for a grant, the grant is political. If you want to get into a movie, you have to be a particular political person. We were just watching one of our friend had never doesn't watch a lot of movies, and I was like, let's watch, the Clooney verse. George Clooney is just a dead ass op, and there's really no other way around it. Very talented guy, but he's just an op, and it permeates throughout all of culture and all of America, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or your job or the music that you listen to. If there's a $30 million, allotment and one of these bills for some sort of art endeavor, I guarantee you it's not going to the kids in the streets and the kids in the hoods. It's going to whatever industry plants. Like we were talking about this guy, Ken Salazar, who's the U.S. ambassador to Mexico. This guy's been picked to be the U.S. ambassador of Mexico since he's been in freaking middle school. So there really is not a lot that most people can do to counteract this system. And I think that leads to a hopelessness within America. Anyway, go ahead.
I want to say this too. I feel like one of the last create boundaries for most American progressives to move past. They use these phrases like decolonialize your mind without conceptualizing what the fuck that means, right? And what I mean to say by that is assuming that one culture is the perfect culture and has the right answers and the way that we deal with these things. This is the way. This is the way that women should be. This is the way that men should be. This is, you know what I'm saying? Like
Homogenous.
this is what religion should look like, and this is the proper way to do these things, right? Now, what I would counter is it's important then also to really have a concept of free boundaries. Like we're the only animal on this planet that forces you to have a good excuse to go to some other place, right? Because what I mean by that is I don't want to tell Russian culture what Russians should do. What is the way that Russians should interact with people that they see as sexual deviants? I don't want to be the one that tells them how Russians should react to people that are not ethnically Russian that are in Russia. I don't want to, but I also don't want a person that is in Russia that feels like they're being oppressed upon in any of those ways to have any problems leaving that place. But we have to also allow cultures to practice their cultures and not predetermine that the way that we do culture is the right way to do culture because it's just incredibly arrogant, especially coming from not just the West, but America specifically. When you're talking about a culture that's less than 400 fucking years old. And
Mhm.
for more than 300 of the years, humans were eradicated on site and or sexually subjugated and made into shadow slavery. Like you're not there. You know, this isn't America. When the fuck wasn't it America? Like this has always been America,
While it was at war.
right? Like so you don't have the moral authority. Like and China has said this several times. You don't have them. Every time I hear frankly, a white leftist say something about China as a black person, you know, oh, the Uyghurs, the motherfucking black people. Okay. There are way more black people in jail in America than Uyghurs in fucking China. Like, if you care about Taiwan, why the fuck don't you care about Puerto Rico? Like, I
Mhm.
don't understand. Like,
Do you
where
think
these,
an American prison is worse than a re-education camp? Have you ever? These are people who've never been to a prison before, and
yeah,
see like what the intensity of it is.
I don't wake up afraid I'm gonna be thrown in a Russian gulag. I wake up terrified they're gonna send me to Guantanamo Bay or
Or you'll
sign up,
just get shot.
right?
You just
Like,
black people get shot by the police. It just
Or
happened here.
literally just lynched, like the guy the other day. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but I'm sure someone will remember.
So many
Like,
people that are
yeah,
killed that it's hard to
they're
keep
trying to
up.
cover it up. They're saying that they can't let the family see the body because of COVID regulations. Like now, the cops care about COVID regulations, but
right,
it's so ridiculous. I
right.
mean, I wanted to also say real quick. I mean, you hinted on it a minute ago. Like that is the downside of our rugged individualism is that you don't have this collective identity, even for patriotism, except when it comes to being against another country, which is why 9/11 was so convenient because it got Americans to come together so well. But now the only way they come together is against Russia, China, Iran, like an enemy country. And unfortunately, that's really convenient for the ruling class because the only way that Americans could like have some kind of meaningful leftist movement is if they studied some other ones like China's maybe. Like I just saw this tweet on another page I really like, cracker.control. Fantastic meme page, another one that posts like really good anti-imperialist tweets. And it was somebody saying like, what I really hate about the Western left is how uncurious they are about Chinese political organization, their economy, like actually learning from them and implementing any of those strategies at home. They're just content to say that's not socialist enough. We're going to write it off entirely, and then just wait for this virgin birth revolution that will never fucking come because you're not organizing along the ways that revolutions actually come out of. You're not seizing state power. Like the guiding principle of Western leftists is rejecting power at all costs. Like they just don't like power. They see that power is corrupted in the governments that they know as examples because it's the only ones they're willing to look at, and they say, "Oh, power must be bad." Not that their version of power, not that individualist capitalist governments are bad, not that you could have like some kind of organizational structure that rewards merit and has transparency like other countries do. It's like they just won't learn out of like their white arrogance. It's wild.
And that's a fact, right? Like, again, having spent so much of my formative years in the South, like one of the things that liberals would say to me all the time, because again, I am a pacifist, but I believe I'm strong gun right advocate, you know, and liberals are like, why do you need guns? Well, first off, the police can't fucking protect me. Okay. I have to protect myself. But like away from a city perspective, which a good portion, there is more wilderness in North America than there is in Africa, right? There's another thing that white people just don't seem to
Wow.
understand. Yeah, right. So, like in the South, what I would say, my quip became because the bear don't give a fuck about your superior argument, right? Like walking through the woods, I can't be like, oh my God, Mr. Bear, why do you want to eat me? I'm a conscious, sentient human being. And the bear don't give a fuck about my
This would be
superior
unethical, bro.
right? Right? Come on, I have a will. Okay, I'm actualized, right? And that goes back to the general liberal lack of understanding of what is your relationship with force. Again, if you're a white woman, your relationship is just fine. You don't have to enact
Call the
violence.
police.
Call the police and they will enact violence for you, right? As an oppressed minority, if I call the police, they're going to kill me. They assume I'm the problem, right? So
Sonya Massey,
my
right
relationship
there.
with force off the rip has to be a very different relationship if I, want to live, stay the fuck alive. And this is what nation states understand. Like, you can't go to the United Nations to protect you. You have to be able to protect yourself. I don't have to love the DPRK, right? But I understand why they act the way they act. They look at what happened in Libya, and they said, "You know what would have stopped that shit from happening?" Right? And so again, it's American foreign policy that makes these kind of excesses inevitable because they understand what their relationship with power is and what they're willing to do to not be colonized. When you're saying decolonize the world, that means you might need to be okay with how DPRK exercises that particular philosophy, which might be different from yours. You try yours over here, they're going to try theirs over there.
Yep.
It's a great conversation. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. Please, let's do this again.
Yeah, I would love to come back anytime. I'm Jones into podcast. I have another thing I'm starting up recently. Emoja, you saw how my previous recent project kind of melted down. Emoja was there for like the last stream I did with this other dude. So I mean, I could just say like it's fine. Like I was working with
We're
this
here
guy.
for the tea, so go ahead and drop it all.
Chris Jeffries, he's a decent guy. He's fine. He's just got like his biases and it's fine. But like I'm sure he's a decent guy at heart. But he's a vegan. He's really into the vegan thing. But like he's a libertarian, vaguely leftist guy, and he's like probably recently radicalized into that. So he's still got some like habits. He'll like throw some slurs or whatever. But I was working with him. We were streaming. He's a good content creator. Like he's good to work with. But I don't know what happened. Like we started streaming with this woman, Gretchen Burns Bergman. You can check it. All these streams are still up. Like, and I left his rants all up there. He went for like 4 hours at a time, sometimes just on my stream. But we started talking to Gretchen Burns Bergman. She's a great prison abolitionist activist, and we had a great hour-long conversation with her. She's telling us all about the stuff that she's been doing over the decades. And then she got off, and we just did our normal, kind of like you guys do, just round table of the headlines and stuff, and talk about anti-imperialist shit. And I must have said something about just like activism that is liberal aligned and individualist based not being effective, and you have to have some kind of collective militant movement. My normal tanky shit, the same thing I'm always saying, the same thing I've been saying for 10 years now. Like it's whatever. He really took offense to it, and he started going off. And then I got off the stream at a normal time. He went on for like another hour and a half, just kind of ranting about that. And he did it again like the next day and the next day. And then Emoji, you came on for like the last one that we did. We had a normal like 2 hour stream, did like some real cool stuff. And then he had this essay that he'd written, which was just like this diss track on tankies and why we're all dogmatists. And we just we take this one line and we won't listen to anything else. I'm like, when something else works, we will listen to that. And that will be absorbed into tankyism. Like that's the whole thing. It's like science. Like when people do that alternative medicine thing and they're like, I don't trust doctors, so I do this alternative medicine. It's like, if that worked, that would be medicine. Doctors would take that and they would say, this is medicine now. That's not alternative medicine. It doesn't work, so it stays alternative. And that's basically what like activism that isn't vanguardism is. It's alternative activism that is not going to topple capitalism or ever really present any threat to it, because it's going to be dismantled. I don't know. So that's all just to say, like, I'm not working with that dude anymore. I don't really have any hard feelings. He probably does have some hard feelings against me. It's fine. Like, I have a new thing that I'm going to try and start up with Sophia, who is too sexy for contacts, like contact lenses on Instagram, and the Anger Podcast, ANGR Podcast. She's both of those handles, and she's super talented. She's a Native woman, and I just love hanging out with people who agree with me and shooting the shit that way. Because it's like, obviously, my whole shtick is like, I found out early on that people can't attack your politics if they're not based on your personal self interest. So if you go online as like a suburban straight white guy and defend trans people and the gay community and minorities and socialism and everything, you have more credibility that way, because people can't just say, "Oh, you're just some jobless minority who's gay and wants things for those people." It's like, no, I'm none of those things. It's not about my identity. It's not about that. Like, I just have some principles. It's really not that hard. So that's like my whole thing that I'm doing. I love hanging out with you guys or people like us who have the right perspective, the actual anti-imperialist line, but also argue with people. I have, I think, almost just as much fun arguing with people like Praxpin and Liquid Zulu too. So it's all fun. It's all good fun online.
I agree. I agree.
Relax, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're everywhere you find podcasts: Apple Podcasts, iTunes. No, not iTunes. iTunes is not it. Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. You can always find us on Podbean or check out our website. I want to give a shout out to our Patreon members, patreon.com/InnerCityLeft, Kelly, Dubsy22, Nicole, Jay Goulart 94, No Ground, RK, Paula, Lissa, Lauren, Suzette, and Dennis. You can be a part of it as well. We got free subscriptions if you're still trying to get that information. I'm going to put all of Turn Leftist information at the bottom. Please check out his new podcast. I will definitely be checking it out as well.
Yeah, we're going to call it True Crimes of the Empire.
I love it. True Crimes of the Empire. So be checking out. I'll definitely be ready to check it out. Hope to have you on the show again to, shoot the shit. In this
and sorry for my scratchy voice this time. This is my second bout of COVID. I'm on day 4 now.
Oh, man, get better, get well.
I feel okay. It's a mild one, but thank you.
It always can be turned up. It always can be wild. So, like, I'm gonna send some prayers to you.
Wrong, okay, Kamala, and
don't get started. We'll never end.
Pandemic is over.
COVID, man. So I'm sorry, man. You got some other shit. I see the soda. Okay, maybe it's that. Yeah.
No, actually, I got a liquid death. Actually, it's like the chud drink, but they actually do taste good. Like I kind of like them. I hate that I like them, but I do.
I love this. I really appreciate it. Again, thanks to our guests, Turn Leftist. I actually appreciate you asked those questions too. I remember people don't usually ask those questions, but I did like it.
I'm a big fan of the show. I've been listening to you guys for a couple months now, ever since I found your page.
Oh, blessings. I appreciate that. For Emoji Little Tanky Sumler, Turn Leftist. I'm Amin TMK. This is Inner City Left, and peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.